with the kit, or in the box. You have two motors, appear to be stepper motors, battery, compartment, wires for the stepper motors, gears for the treads, the frame, and then this one very long tread which we'll have to break up, and these two short treads. I have no idea why they did it that way. And then this blue tray does not come with it, but these are the parts that came inside. And then there are these three Allen wrenches. Wrenches are also supplied to help assembly. So by looking at the pictures on the web page, it appears this is the top frame. Underneath that goes these two parts to connect to the lower frame, and the tracks and motors connect to these two parts. So what I've noticed from the picture is that these small holes are oriented the same way. I'm not sure what's the back and what's the front, but I'll refer to the side facing me as the back. And they go underneath these two components, and then these attach under here to the tread superstructure. So the way these two pieces are oriented like this, with these little holes towards the back, and these pieces have a notch coming out of the top, and on the bottom have these small holes. Those go down, and these two outer holes go to these holes. So in millimeters, so that's about a 1 centimeter length screw. Size cameras. There's not here off the square, so just gonna work. There's some so press up down. Sorry about that. It's not dangerous. This top picture, the board, I'll list the name of the board. I asked, or if you look at the questions at the bottom, I asked the question for the name of that board. We can see there's a motor up front, motor up back. So these two, clearly this is where the motor goes. So it's only at one end. So these are going to be opposite each other. Got to figure out if that orientation. This has to be at the top because this has to go in there. So since one of them will go like this and one will go like this, with the parts, there's most of what you have here are this type of screw, the same screw that I was using to do the beginning of the assembly. They're about 1 centimeter long. Then there's these, and these short brass colored items I believe are part of the separators for the guide wheels and the gears of the tread. I haven't figured out what these 6 are for. I haven't quite figured out what these screws are for. There's lock nuts here, and I think the lock nuts are going to be useful. There aren't enough for everywhere I would want to use them, so I'm going to try to guess where they're used, and after the model is built I'm going to have to look carefully to see if screws are coming loose and start buying a few more lock nuts and adding them. Are used. Here is a different type of screw that fits this nut. There's 4 of these. These are axles. There's also 2 of these. That's an axle for the drive part that's used like this. This will hook to the motor. And then in this little bag that came, there are bearings. And these screws are used to hold the axle onto the cog. And then notice there are 4 of these black set screws. Those go into the drive axle here to hold the motor shaft. Okay, wheel assembly. And by the way, they are called wheels. The things that the treads run on of a tank they are called wheels. Just Googled that. So the little brass pieces there, those little brass pieces hold the wheels apart. The wheels are then going to ride. I'll show you on a short piece of tread. These non-cogged wheels, or non-geared wheels, are going to ride in the tread like this. If you notice, the tread has, the inside of the tread has these little teeth. The outside of the tread is smooth, relatively, and the inside has these teeth. And there's 2 rows of teeth, and the wheels will go on either side of those teeth. The wheels that have the cogs on them, the gears on them, if you look at the let's see if I can get a good close-up here. If you look at the tread, there's one area that has a hole going down it. So one edge of the gears go in there, and the other edge of the gear goes right at the edge of the tread. So there's 2 places those gears hook into and get a good firm grip on the tread. So remember there were short brass pieces and long brass pieces. The short brass pieces go to the wheels that don't have gears, and the long brass pieces go to the wheels that do have gears. And you take the same screw that I used at the very beginning, the 1 centimeter screw, and those go through the there's 4 screw holes. I have no idea what this top one's for, but the 3 that are at the same radius, you take those, you put in 1 centimeter screw, and you put in the short brass piece, and then you put this on top and you sandwich them in and do the same thing. Short ones for the non-geared, long ones for the geared. So earlier I built the superstructure, this part, and then these will be connecting to the part that connects to the tracks. So I'm going to connect that, and they connect through these 2 little holes, and it looks like these brackets go inside of there, and the only screws that I've seen that seem to be long enough and will do the job and will fit through the holes, yes, will fit through the holes, are these screws here. They are Phillips head. They're Phillips head screws, and they are about 1.4, 1.3 centimeters, or half an inch, a little more than half an inch. Looking at the picture, as best I can tell, the screw goes on the inside. I'm not sure I like that, and it doesn't quite look what the picture looks like, but this is the only way it works. So we will now mount that, and remember, we're going to do this. These are the holes that the motors will mount to. We're going to do this so that they're on opposite ends. So this is okay. I'll screw it in. And we use buckets for these. I don't like the screws. Only it seems to be this, but that's the right screws we use. And the other one's on it. I don't need those too long, but so motor drives over here. Yeah, that's not right. So now motor drives over here, and then screws on the outside. That'll be a wide ways. So we saw there. So we use these angle guys first, and we use a screwdriver on them. I'm going to go these off right now. Okay. So that's the main structure. Seems to me the axles should get lock nuts. There's going to be a lot of vibration with them. And we're using the original 1 centimeter screw, and we're putting the wide part of the axle next to the chassis. And I'm sorry, we're not using those screws. We're using screws that look much like them but are larger. Using this screw as opposed to the original screw that I was using. And this screw is about 1.4 centimeters, and it fits a large Allen wrench. No problem. So it turns out, the original screws, well, the screws, well, they have a right thread, the head screws too much, and this screw, which is a belt set, and I'm sure it's something, and they are 0.7 centimeters, they have a right screw. So use that, the head is true. There's obviously the big hole that goes around this bushing there, or the bushing goes inside.
Has at least one track.
Echo, cancel. The bushing goes inside that large hole. And then these two holes line up with these two smaller holes. There's a problem. So it turns out that the original screws, the 1 centimeter screw, while they have the right tread, the head protrudes too much. And it is this screw which has a Phillips head, and I'm not sure why there's so many of them, and they are about 0.7 centimeters. They are the correct screw. Because when you use them, the head doesn't protrude. The screw holes are actually recessed. Okay. Now that that's done, to the motor, and the motor actually slips on quite the axle actually slips onto the motor quite easily. You see that first one, and then we need these little set screws. Mostly one key part of the shaft. The motor gets sensor uses a small sound wrench. There you go. Play 1000 AX. There you go, cancel. There you go, play 1000 AX. There you go, cancel. There you go, play 10,000 AX. This shaft is good. Very nice. Actually, I'm not sure how far it needs to go. Just line it up later. Go on, good trip. So what I wound up doing was putting the shaft to the motor as close to the chassis as possible, leaving a little bit of a gap so that there's no friction. Alright, let's put the wheels on. And the geared wheel hits up against the set screws. And that's as far as we can get it in. Let's see if that's where the screw lines out before the screw lines out. That's the geared wheels. Now for the non-geared wheels, looks like they are symmetrical. Doesn't matter which side goes in, but we have another issue. We're going to be using, make sure I don't spill it. Going to be using the bearings and the little screws that were with the bearings in that little bag. So you want the bearings. The bearings, you're not going to be able to see this. At least I don't think so. You can kind of see a little glint of it. But there's a rim on this bearing. One edge is raised. There you can see it. One edge is raised. That has to be held up against the wheel axle hole. So you're going to put one bearing on this shaft on the axle so that the rim is on this side. The rim will go up against this enlarged part, and the narrower part is on this side, and the narrower part fits right into this hole. And then that fits on nicely. Then you take another bearing, they're all the same, and you take it so that the rim is outboard of the bearing and the narrower part of the bearing is inboard, and now that slips in there, and you're going to secure it to the outside with one of the screws that came with the bearings. Okay, so that's the end of part one. I hope to do a part two, which will show the electrical connections and possibly some references to programming. Good luck. Thanks.